welcome back. If you could grab your seats, we've got some lightning talks, lightning talks. And I didn't get a biography, so I've just made this up after a very brief chat. I actually know Brendan, so I have a fighting chance. Brendan's coming to talk to us first for 10 minutes, followed by Dan, who's over here. Don. Autocorrect. Brendan is, in my words, not his, but possibly his too, who knows, a kick-ass consultant and a data magician. That's certainly what he was doing when we worked together. And then Don, not Dan, is a multiple hat wearer working in a homegrown Aussie quality consultancy and by all accounts doing an awful lot of stuff. So he might be a bit tired. Lots of energy for Don. Take it away, Brendan.
Thank you very much. Data magician in the sense that I make my data magically appear and disappear. So I'm going to be talking today about best practice and why we should ban it from our vocabulary forever. No excuses. So first of all, what is best practice? Best practice is defined in a couple of ways. So the dictionary definition is really around research and replicable replication of it, basically. A second definition I found was essentially following the same theme around replication, research, and really going through the different options and finding out what is best. However, that is often not what people mean when they talk about best practice. So first of all, I'm going to say that, again, I am a consultant. I work across a range of different industries, different clients, different teams, and across the board, everyone's doing things differently. Everyone thinks they're doing best practice, everyone's doing it differently. So that should say one thing in and of itself, that everyone thinks best practice, or what's best practice to their problem, is different. So what do people really mean when they say best practice? And I'm sure some people will recognize what they really mean in a few of their conversations. But a lot of the time, people are saying, in conversations when they're deciding what solutions to go for, they're really just saying, well, this is what I know, so therefore, this is what we should do. Or somebody else did it this way, therefore we should do it this way. But it doesn't really capture a lot of the intricacies that we face when we deal with a project within a company. So what organisation A did isn't necessarily what organisation B should do. So when we talk about best practice, it doesn't actually give any real information. We're not saying that this option is better because of X, Y, and Z. We're simply saying it's better because it's best practice. And you can't really argue with that. So to elaborate on that a little bit, when people talk about best practice, they really are using it often as a shield in these conversations. So kind of going, well, this is what I know, therefore I'll say it's best practice, and then they can't really argue with me because how can you argue against best practice? It's best practice. It's why it's called best practice. And that is a genuine conversation I've had. So people will also use this as a way to also use it as a bit of a shield when they don't really understand what it is that they're trying to do as well. So people who, for example, trying to set up a data warehouse, they know they want a data warehouse. They don't really know what it needs to do and who it needs to be used for. So they start throwing around things like best practice. And they'll go, well, we need a Kimball star schema because it's best practice. And it's like, is that really going to meet our requirements? Is that really going to be useful for the end users? Like, what are we actually trying to do? Second of all, it gets often used to promote things. People, teams, organizations, they often want to say, yeah, I'm doing best practice, as almost a badge of honor to kind of say, well, we're doing better than you. But as I mentioned at the start, different organizations have different problems, different solutions. Everyone's doing things differently. You know, they're not necessarily saying some are doing it good, some are doing it bad. It's different because the environment's different. The people are different. The organization's different. The problems are different. The IT infrastructure is different. And finally, some people, especially in the leadership role, will often use the term best practice to kind of escape some of the responsibility. So they'll go, oh, we need a data warehouse. They don't want to make decisions around, well, what are we going to implement? What infrastructure are we going to use? They're going to say, well, we're going to implement best practice. And that really just erodes some of this, the team sort of makeup. You're not listening to different ideas, and it's really taking away their responsibility for the decision. You know, if something goes wrong, they go, well, it was best practice. You know, it's not my problem, it's best practice. So what are these problems really, what is this actually causing problems with our projects? First and foremost, it's really ignoring different ideas that are being put forward. If you put forward something, a different idea, people are often shooting it down because it's not best practice, or they don't deem it to be best practice. Again, I'm hoping the theme here is that there's no such thing as best practice, but a lot of people will discount things simply because they don't know it, therefore it's not best practice, therefore we shouldn't do it. With promoting, it often breeds a very toxic work culture where people's ideas are not shared and valued. It's very much about promoting, well, we're doing best practice, therefore we're better, therefore you should listen to us. And I've worked across many teams where this has actually occurred. And finally, avoiding this responsibility really does create a lack of leadership within the project team and even within the wider team of stakeholders. So overall, trying to take the concept of best practice is really removing that visibility and understanding on the ability to be able to articulate some of these concepts and the reasons why we should be doing something. You know, we shouldn't be doing something because it's best practice. We should be doing something because it solves A to constraints B for user C. So the ability to articulate solutions does create a few extra benefits that you can't really get when you start talking about best practice. First one is building trust. You start building trust with people when, so I'll take for example, if you start talking about best practice, you're not really creating a sense of trust with your users. You're saying, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Whereas if you explain the reasons why and you start engaging with clients and users, it starts to build some of this ability to generate the trust that they go, okay, this person does understand our problems, this person does kind of understand our solutions, maybe I should listen to him. Secondly, it generates buy-in. So going that extra step further than explaining why we're doing something rather than just using the term best practice, we start generating buy-in from different stakeholders, different users, people within the project group, because they understand why. Especially from a junior perspective, with junior people coming in, if we say, yep, you're doing that simply because it's best practice, they're not learning, they're not understanding why, they're not going that one step further to say, well, what is it that we're trying to achieve, and what are our constraints? What are some of these issues that we need to work through? And finally, we create a shared vision. So when people, if we do come across a problem, people can go, look, I know what we're trying to do, let me find a solution to that. And so they've got a better understanding as to what they're looking for. They can go that one step further. They can use their initiative because they're on board as to the reasons why. So how do we achieve this? Firstly, we understand the problem. And I know this is going to sound very, very basic for a lot of you, but we understand the problem. So starting from that problem first. We then start to organise some of these organisational priorities. So understanding not only what the problem is, but why it's a problem and what they're trying to achieve from it. Understanding constraints. So these can be anything from cost to the politics. Again, going into an organisation as a consultant, a lot of the times we have to navigate things like politics. We have to navigate their environments. We need to navigate various different things, like even the people. Some people, all those personalities that you need to navigate. And when we start throwing in best practice, you're basically just creating a barrier and going, look, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Then exploring the options. So once you understand what it is we're trying to achieve, and putting that towards then coming up with the different options. Now these you could go through and say best practice, etc. but not using the term best practice, going, cool, we can solve this, and this is a good option to go for because it meets our constraints, it meets our problem, it meets our goals. And suddenly that's a much more powerful story. And then as a team, deciding what solution to go for. And so this is then taking it from a solution-driven approach where we're going, all right, let's find best practice and implement that, to, okay, what are we trying to solve? Cool, we're going to implement something that's solving that problem. So to kind of quickly sum up, because I've been given the 1-minute warning, it's not about changing an entire way of working, but just changing our mindsets. To ban the term, and I ban the term best practice from all of my teams. If my teams are coming up to me talking about problems and they use the term best practice, I tell them to go away and come back to me when they've actually done that research and come back with an actual plan. And so it just starts with just banning those two terms, best practice. Thank you very much. There's my references, and thanks to the sponsors.